Arsenal, they would love to win the group with a week to spare. A point will do it. 4 wins from 4. They have a comfortable gap over tonight's opponent, PSV, but obviously they don't really want to have to do the business against FC Zurich in a week's time, so get it done tonight if you can. That said, it can be an intimidating spot, the Philips Stadion. It's a sellout, and Arsenal are strong again. There are changes, but as you can see, the likes of Ramsdale, Saliba, the club captain Odegaard, Martinelli, all amongst the starters for Mikel Arteta. And a couple of changes for PSV. We've had a bad week. Lost at Arsenal 1-0 a week ago, as I'm sure you know. Lost at the weekend to Groningen 4-2. But another chance for the likes of Gakpo, Simons and others to maybe shine on a big stage. Martin Keown and Joe Cole are along for the ride. Welcome both. We'll get their thoughts very shortly. But let's hear, without further ado, from the Arsenal boss, Mikel Arteta, who's spoken to Becky Ives.
Mikel, the last thing you want to do is a performance against Southampton that derails it and the players lose a little bit of confidence, because they're all brimming with confidence. Even the lads we've seen coming in, the likes of Vieira, who was excellent a couple of weeks ago. So just a bit of continuity, I think.
Part of that continuity comes from Granit Xhaka. Now, it's 3 years to the day, the stats tell me, that he was effectively booed off against Crystal Palace.
Yep.
Now, a week can be a long time in football. 3 years is a lifetime. I know he's had his moments, Martin, with Arsenal, but he's never had better time than this, has he?
No, and I think his recent form now, he completely draws a line onto this moment in his career. This was when he thought he was about to leave. Of course, Mikel Arteta has really believed in him, seen that he was really necessary for the development of this young group, and he's been an ever-present now in this team, whether it be the midweek team, as it is today, or at weekends. And his position is becoming much more advanced, Joe. He's now playing like a box-to-box midfield player, and in the recent games, he's scoring goals off his right foot. Not done that before. 2 in 2 in a similar position, and I think he's just been given that licence now, a bit like the Man City midfield players do. And I'm going to say Arteta is copying a little bit what Pep Guardiola does. Midfield players either side of a deep-sitting player get forward, and now Xhaka is doing that very well.
I imagine midfielders love that, don't they?
Oh, God, he'd be loving it. I mean, he was seen early on in his Arsenal days as a bit of a destroyer, someone who would break up the play and lend it. But I think having Martinelli outside him, which constantly keeps the opposition honest, allows that little pocket for him to run into and score goals. He's a good finisher. He's a lovely technician. We've seen him score some worldies in his career. And I think it's important for him as well to, like Martin said, to draw a line under that situation now. He's a good player. He's one of the leaders in the dressing room. He's obviously got a good personality that brings this club forward. And I think he's so important for this club. But I think we just be happy if you're an Arsenal fan, Arsenal player, on what he's doing now.
He's got to get the balance right. Because, as a midfield player, I would like my midfield players. I had Manu Petit and Patrick Vieira. So I want them to come home, sit there occasionally, pick and choose the right times. And sometimes against Southampton, he was in Martinelli's space, and it was breaking down. So he's got to get that right. But he's certainly developed in a way that we never expected 3 years ago, and fair play to him for doing that.
Folks home are thinking, what a shock that Joe wants him to go a bit further forward and Mike wants to come back and help the centre-halves. What a shock. Looks well, Robin.
He does.
Well,
he
couple of grey hairs, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've got on myself. But no, he was fantastic. We had a good hour and a half actually talking. He had full of praise for Mikel Arteta, as you would expect, and Ruud van Nistelrooy. He's on his own journey of coaching. We may see him in the dugout at some point, but he seems to think this will be a close game. I know. Last week Arsenal were very much in control.
Yeah. But
he seems to think at PSV it'll be very, very different.
We were a bit underwhelmed, it's fair to say, a week ago with PSV. They didn't quite get their mojo going at the Emirates. They lost at the weekend, so perhaps they'll feel they kind of owe everybody one tonight.
Yeah, and they've scored 15 goals, Matt, in the last 3 home games. So you're interested to see how they cope.
Yeah, it's because looking at Ajax, who've had a bad week, so Dutch football will be thinking, need to show the rest of Europe that we are not the also-rans here.
Yeah, and traditionally they don't lack confidence as a nation, the Dutch. So they'll be very, this will be hurting them because they're identifying themselves with their football. And talking to a couple of guys that were there in and around it, that it did hurt them last week because they expect to be able to compete with teams like Arsenal. Like I said, I really do think this is a Champions League game. There's 2 good teams on the pitch tonight. I think it'll be a cracker. I think it's important for Arsenal. And he's gone with a strong side. I think the first 20, 25 minutes, you have to, it's another test for these Arsenal players. Deal with a crowd, keep hold of the ball, but still bring your personality in the way that you play. And I think I'm really looking forward to this one, Matt.
Not far from kickoff now. Martin was all over Ruud van Nistelrooy a week ago, his old mate. And we'll hear from the PSV coach after the break. Don't think he felt his side did him justice a week ago. He'll want more in this meeting in Eindhoven.
Sponsored by Bet365.
Welcome back. As promised and as demanded by one of our studio guests, here's the one and only Ruud van Nistelrooy with Becky. Me and Joe quite enjoying that. Martin was kind of bristling, I don't know, something strange.
He always looks a bit nervous, Martin, whenever he's playing against Arsenal. As if someone's going to come behind him.
Yeah. He keeps just checking his shoulder.
I thought Ruud spoke really well there, didn't he? He seems
well.
rather more engaging, maybe, than he was as a player. I'm having a go there.
You seem to like to engage with him pretty much as a player at the time.
Well, he's a top. You have to say he was a top player. We had a few moments, but he'd be hoping his team. I like the word belief. He's talking about belief, getting behind his team. He doesn't see it as a must-win game. We know it is, but he doesn't want to put in that corner. So I understood that. But this will be a very different PSV team here tonight.
Got some talent, that's for sure. We didn't see much of Gakpo last week, although clearly, as we heard from Robin van Persie, they know what they've got in Holland. And it's how long they can keep him. And similarly, Xavi Simons.
Yeah. He come back, and then Simons. This guy's he's a beautiful ball carrier in the midfield. Not settled into his career. He's been at Barcelona, PSG, and he's at PSV now. He breaks the lines. He's one of them players that you feel he needs an arm round him. He wasn't happy with getting brought off. But here, look here, just gets the finish, which happens a lot with young players. He does a lot of good things, and then the last bit falls down. Lends the ball out wide. Similar to what Xhaka does at Arsenal, arriving in the box, he'll score goals. He's certainly won. This will be a stage for these players now, these PSV players, because the Premier League is where they want to be. So he want to come in and affect the game, certainly more than what he did last week. But he is a talent.
Yeah, he looked not upset. That's probably reading too much into it. He looked a bit peevish to come off last week because it's the shop window, I guess. But they are goal scorers at home, particularly, Martin, as the screen shows.
Simons there. I think he's at that stage, and Joe will know. Because Joe, you were developed through as a young player, like to run with it. And I think he's showboating a little bit at times. Okay. He's one of them trying to catch the eye instead of doing what's necessary to get past a player, create space, or when to shoot. And that's the change. He's been around. He's been at Barcelona. He's been at PSG. He's effectively almost on loan, you could say. There's a buyback clause where he can go back. And I think he expects to go back. He's got a lot of personality, and I think tonight's a really big night for him. He'll see this as a platform, and Arsenal need to shut him out. Someone needs to get in and around him quickly and stop him controlling this game tonight.
Excellent from Martin. Almost like he got the shirt back on, ready to get into a couple of those PSV players.